Okay, so today in this lesson, we're going to learn about what a histogram is, okay? So a histogram is a type of bar graph. A histogram is a type of bar graph that, um, it's not really a bar graph, it's like a statistical graph. It's a statistical graph, right? So basically, it's a type of graph that uses bars, right? Right? It looks something like this, right? But it's more like something like this, more or less, right? It looks something like this. Okay, notice how the bars are connected, right? This is not the same as a bar graph, because a bar graph is a graph, because a bar graph is a graph where the bars are separated, right? We learned that in a previous video, right? um we learned that in a previous video. The point of a histogram is that, okay, so let's compare between a bar graph and a histogram, right? So a bar graph is a graph that looks like something like this, right? Right, but notice how the bars are separated. This is a bar graph. This is a histogram. Okay, let's look at the differences. Well, what are the differences between a histogram and a bar graph? Well, a bar graph, the bars are separated. In a histogram, they're connected, right? A bar graph tells us about information that is information when you're comparing two or more different types of information. Right? In a histogram, you're you're not comparing two or more different types of information. You're comparing you're comparing the same type of information. You're making a comparison between the same type of information. Okay, it's different. Why is it different? In a bar graph, for example, you will use a bar graph, like say if you did a survey and you said something like, um, like you asked a class, and you said to a class, and you said to them, I want to compare between cats and dogs, right? You would use a bar graph, right? Between cats and dogs, right? But in a histogram, it's not necessarily the same. In a histogram, you would use a histogram, like if you're trying to compare between, like, or you're trying to sort out between, like, grades, for example, and you want to see like a statistical analysis of the grade of grades, like grades in a grades in a classroom. Okay, it's different, right? The reason why the bars are put together is because in a histogram, it's called the spread of the data. So you're trying to see how is the information, or how is the data spread out when you have the same type of information. Whereas in a bar graph, it's the reason why the bars are disconnected, because it's not the same type of information. Okay. Um, Histograms are important in statistical analysis because we need to understand it. We need to understand histograms um, when we want to see how, like if we want to easily see, for example, the mean median mode of a spread of data, when we want to figure out, like, you know um, what are the intervals in a histogram, you know, when we want to figure out certain things that we need to know. So we'll get into more detail in that in a later video, but for the purposes of this video, you just want to understand, you want to see the differences between a histogram and a bar graph. A histogram is a type of statistical graph that is used in statistics. They use it to compare similar types of data. Like an example of that would be, for example, like if you're comparing height, if you're comparing grade point average or test scores, if you're comparing, if you're comparing, you know, you're comparing test score data, you're comparing you know, similar types of information. A bar graph is different from a histogram because in a bar graph, the bars are separated, and it's talking about different types of information. Okay, we'll get into more detail about the mean, median, mode, range, interquartile range, etc. In the next video. But for the purposes of this video, you just want to learn like what are the differences between a histogram and a bar graph. Okay, so that's it. Thank you and have a nice day.